All right, we are live. How is it going, Roy?
It's going awesome. It is. This is one of my favorite spots of the week. I hope, and I think our audience enjoys it just as much. It's not about numbers. It's mostly, it gives me something a little bit different to look forward to. I love the markets, and there's always crazy stuff going on. This week's less crazy than last week, but we got some fun stuff to talk about. CEO edition. How are you doing, Tevis?
I am doing well. I'm trying to figure out why StreamYard is bugging out for me, but I am doing well. Honestly, like I didn't even realize we had bootleg tonight. And so I messaged Roy like 30 minutes before the show. I was like, shit, do we have the show tonight? He's like, yes. So we scrambled to get everything in order, but here we are. We are live.
Yeah, and it's hard not to be happy when Palantir just keeps hitting 52-week highs like every week. So I don't know if you've ever had that problem before with stock. It just keeps going no matter what. And it's like,
you know what? Of all the problems I have, that is not one that I have with SoFi, thankfully.
True. And I bought more SoFi today. I bought some more Robinhood calls too. Bought some SoFi calls as well. I think that was it. That'll probably be it for the week. Hey, Matt Money. Yep. Congratulations on Rocket Lab, by the way, Matt.
Matt, come on. Come on the StreamYard. Hold on. Let me send him a link. Matt loves to get on here, and then he doesn't join the StreamYard. Let me copy a link and send it over to him. I'm just going to post it here.
That way you can't complain. So, while you're doing that, what we're going to talk about tomorrow, today we had the PPI numbers. I almost got it wrong. PPI numbers, they actually came in cold, so the market rallied off of that. And it's usually when those come in cold, which is a good thing, that's indicative of the CPI coming in, probably on the colder side. So, a lot of the consensus estimates, if you'll throw this up, Tevis. Consensus estimates vary, but it's about 2. So that would bring us at a 3% flat handle. But you'll notice that a lot of these predictions are right at 2.9. And so that has a bit of a psychological effect, actually more than a bit of a psychological effect, because this would be the first time in a long time that the CPI has been at a 2 handle. Yeah, the core CPI will be a little bit higher, and that has a little bit more variance in it. But if we get a 2 handle, Tevis, what do you think the market will do?
Go up.
Yeah, even SoFi, right?
Yeah, I mean, there we go. Matt Money is going to be here soon. Yeah, look, I think if inflation goes down, then it's good, but it also probably means no rate cuts immediately. I mean, I don't think the Fed is going to be in a rush to be cutting rates if inflation is already going down.
Well, I mean, the point of the higher rates was that they'd tame inflation. And so if it looks like mission's accomplished at the same time as things are getting weak, and there are signs that things are getting weak out there, that a lot of CEOs are calling for and actually mentioning the Federal Reserve more often than ever. There's some uncertainty there, but it seems like I don't think there's a need for an emergency cut as I did possibly before. I was hoping that they wouldn't, but in September, I think they're almost guaranteed to cut. Probabilities are still 100% of some sort of cut, and we'll find out based on this. So yeah, market will rally. Let me tell you, I did something stupid.
Flash is asking, what am I looking at?
So this is these are different organizations, mostly banks. I think there's like 2 that are not. That are from the Wall Street Journal. Mohammed El-Erian, he's commentator on CNBC and others. And this is what they're guessing for the print for the month of CPI on the left-hand side under headline CPI, and then the overall CPI over the 12 months. And I realize my mouse pointer doesn't show anything. So hopefully that's understandable. So we're looking, if we get 3%, that comes in with expectation. 2.9, it's under expectations. It has a 2 handle. The market will rally, and because I don't follow me in this, and I think it's too late to follow me in this because CPI prints before the market opens. But I did what I almost never do. I bought naked call options that were short term out of the money. Guess what stock I did that betting on a two handle tomorrow?
Palantir.
Not Palantir, brother. You hold this stock.
Robinhood.
SoFi.
Oh, SoFi. What's that one?
It's one that the market has priced so that it thinks that rate cuts are all that matters. I know that that's not true of the company. Like, it does benefit them some, but I think that if we do get a 2.9 handle, SoFi might be trading in the sevens tomorrow. Briefly, maybe not hold.
What's
I don't
that
think around holding. It's going to be a short-term pump, but I'll make a decent amount of money if calls. This is a small amount of money, but guys, it's about $100. So yeah.
What is SoFi at right now? I haven't even tuned into the market.
I bought these earlier in the week. Let's see.
Did we have a
664?
Today was a green day, hey?
Yeah.
Tesla up over 5%. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw Nubank also reported earnings and did fairly well.
Yeah.
They're only up 3% after hours.
Yeah, the thing with Nubank, and I'm a holder now. That's my newest position. Pun not intended, but I'll take it. It's executing at a very high level. The revenue basically came in expectations. I think profitability. It was. I'd have to look it up. I've not had a great chance to go through the numbers, just a headline. The one that caught my eye was that they had gained 5 million accounts that quarter.
Was that a lot? I have no idea.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. Like, think how many SoFi gets.
Yeah, but Nubank's like a $50 billion company, no?
Yeah, but still, like, they are
$60 billion.
And basically, like, my thesis on it is very simple: is like, I need a Latin American play, just because of divestment from the Far East. A lot of that's coming into Mexico and Latin America. Their economies are growing well anyway. There is geopolitical risk, but I think overall, as strong of a company as Nubank is, I either wanted that or Mercado Libre, and I ended up going with Nubank. I think it's not going to be one of those where it just instantly explodes and goes up 50% or something like that. But it's my smallest position other than Bitcoin miners, and so I think it's a good one. But as far as CPI expectations, one of the reasons why I think that we need something a little bit more is some of the CEOs out there are sounding a little bit desperate. So this is one. Have you heard of Redfin before?
Yeah, I have heard of Redfin.
So Redfin, of course, does mortgages, and they are very impacted by interest rates. And so they've tried to diversify their business. And they were asked, okay, so Glenn, just to take a step, this is not talking to the CEO, to take it a step further, what is plan B if mortgage rates don't come down? Because to me, this sounds very much like blah, 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 blah. So what's plan B? Great question. Plan B is to drink our own urine or our competitor's blood. Stay in the foxhole. I don't know if you remember, but the last earnings call ended with me singing a line from a Who song, Who Won't Get Fooled Again, where I said that we weren't banking on low rates. And yeah, actually, here we said at the end, he's like, thank you. We'll drink our own urine before the blood. Actually, I wish I just hadn't said that. And I don't know what the I love or notify you thing was a bit, but it just is like, this CEO, I don't know, man. Like, he's probably just struggling with life right now. And it just sounds like, I don't know if this is normally him. I don't follow Redfin, but that quote caught my eye. When a CEO is talking about drinking competitors' blood or our own urine just to stay alive in the foxhole, it's like, yeah, we probably need to cut some rates. Like, just a little cut.
I don't know how to respond to that. So on one hand, I'm like, that's crazy. On the other hand, I'm like, that's commitment.
Yes.
I'm torn. I'm in between those two emotions. I think, look, man, I mean, I've been following Tesla for like 5 years. I'm no stranger to crazy shit said on earnings calls.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see. I don't know if it was like said sarcastically. Like, that's what I'm thinking of right now. Like, was it said in a serious tone? But
I listened to the audio and no, it just, the guy was talking, off the cuff, and he's clearly Like, dude, interest rates are freaking coming down. So what's plan B? What's plan B? And they keep pressing him, and he finally like, fine, we're gonna freaking drink our competitors' blood or drink our urine. We're gonna be in the foxhole. We're gonna live. I wish I hadn't said that.
What the hell?
I mean, CEOs are people too, right? They have egos. They get frustrated when things are not good, especially if it's beyond their control. And that happens. We saw some of that on our next topic. Let me share this here. There was an epic interview last quarter.
Next topic. I'm still not over this one.
Okay. Well, I guess, I mean, Redfin, I don't know. It's one of those things I've not thought of at all. I just know, I have some of that exposure just because of SoFi with interest rates, and I know what'll happen with that market. So last quarter, this is Chipotle and Starbucks, and there's a reason why it's side by side. So there was the former, and yes, I said former, CEO of Starbucks, was interviewed by Jim Cramer after a dismal earnings, and just sounded very scripted, sounded very robotic, did not sound sincere at all. And that interview it tanked the stock. It had actually, a lot of people think that was the last straw that ended up with him being fired. And
this is Cramer, right?
Yeah, with Jim Cramer. So, and then today it was announced that Starbucks has acquired Chipotle's CEO. So Nicole is being brought over. He's with Chipotle for a long time. He was with there was another chain that he was with beforehand that he drew the wealth. I'm blanking on it. Let me look that up. Taco Bell. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was another big one. And Taco Bell, when he took it over, was just, kind of a forgotten franchise, and he revitalized that. Chipotle has always been, solid under his management, but they're hoping that he can do to Starbucks what he did with Chipotle, what he did with Taco Bell. And honestly, I wouldn't bet against him. So this is just early market hours. Chipotle ended up going down. I believe it ended up about, let's see. I had this pulled up earlier. 7.5%. So it continued to tank. Now, Starbucks, without looking it up, you can put in the chat, and Tevis, guess what percentage Starbucks.
I already looked it up. I'm sorry.
Okay. Would you have guessed that, though?
No, that's incredible. So when I woke up this morning, I saw the news, while I was, getting in the shower to go to work. And I was I saw the headline, and then I saw that it was one of them was down 10%. The other one was up 10%. I was like, wow, Starbucks up 10%. Steve is going to be happy. And then I just looked, and Starbucks is up 25% on the day. So
it's insane. And it's not, I mean, on one hand, it is insane, that a CEO would have this kind of value. But you firsthand, we don't want to talk about the earnings too much, but a company that you have invested in for a while has had CEO trouble, and they reported earnings. Any guesses on that name, Tevis?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
I said that firsthand that a CEO can make or break a company. You're in a company that has had CEO troubles a bit. Unity, yes.
Yes. But we weren't going to talk about Unity tonight.
We weren't going to talk about it.
I want to throw this up so we can watch it. This was,
There we go. This is it. This is the interview, guys.
Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Well, I want to make a point here, sir. You are still expanding as if it is business as usual. You had, for instance, on the quarter, you talk about.
By the way, this is the old CEO that is no longer with Starbucks.
Opening stores in Honduras and Ecuador. Is it not time to pause, sir, and figure out what's really going wrong and spend a deep dive and making it so that this decline in comp store numbers does not continue? Because it is perilous to the actual existential existence of Starbucks.
Jim, thank you for the question. What I would tell you is, if you look across the world, our system sales in Latin America expanded double digits. Our sales in Japan expanded double digits. Our business outside of Malaysia and Indonesia in Asia Pacific showed growth. If you look at the US business and look at the fundamentals of the US business, we are holding share in the US. We are still the largest player in out-of-home coffee. If you look at some of the metrics that we
Dunkin'
have,
Donuts, Tim Horton said you are not holding shares, sir. I regard them as being seminal companies that are just as good when it comes to McDonald's says you are losing share. I can't go against those three companies. They are too good and too honest and too big for me to dismiss.
we are the leading category player in coffee. I'm talking visitation share and what we have. If you look at our in-home coffee business, it grew share 140 basis points. But if you look at the business underpinning us, tea grew 8%, cold grew 1%. So there are elements in here. If you look at our partner sentiment and what we have inside stores, attrition is down to its lowest levels. So there's work going in. The thing we didn't do enough of is really attack the occasional customer with delivering and communicating value to them in a more aggressive manner. That's what the plan we have does.
And he deserved to be fired. I mean, he didn't really have a plan. It seems like he had very poor execution. And you can see the stock performance over the last 5 years. This is including today's move. If you had invested 5 years ago, you would have lost a little bit less than 1%. And then there's inflation on top of that, plus opportunity costs. So if you have a major public company like this, and this is not because, COVID spike and COVID drop or anything, like you're just losing market share again and again. You don't have a response to that with Jim Cramer. You don't have a response other than just saying, well, at least we're growing in this area and this area that you don't want to talk about. You're gone. So my question is, Starbucks has a agreement, if I understand correctly, with Union. And so one of the thoughts was like, new CEO can come in and he can do a lot more automation. But I don't know how that will fly in the face of Union stuff. So there'll be some waters to chart and some choppy waters to navigate, rather. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, Dutch Brothers, that's a good call out, Matt. Matt invested in Bros maybe a year and a half ago or so. I'm not an investor in that company. There's, I don't. There's some risk there, but they are growing year over year 30%. They actually have a plan to capture market share, and they're executing on it. So I would if I had to pick between these two, even with a new CEO in place, I'd go with Bros. But yeah, they've got a good CEO now. You hold some of this, Tevis or Chipotle?
I hold neither of those two stocks. Steven tried to get me into Starbucks, saying it was undervalued, and there's a bunch of stocks that I think are just like really iconic brands that are beaten down, and frankly, all of them are beaten down because of declining growth. Nike is one of them. I think Ulta had a CNBC interview recently where they were like Sephora is eating market share, and so they're down quite a bit. I think 52-week lows. Starbucks, obviously, Disney, obviously, a whole bunch of other names. I pulled this list of like all these stocks that are at 52-week lows, and a lot of them it's just declining growth rates. Where we are in the cycle right now, I don't hold Starbucks. I don't really want to buy Starbucks. Like this right here is my Starbucks equivalent, and even this is gonna, I think, face some trouble with the tough comparable years with that growth rate. That might fall, like from a technical perspective, I don't think it has a good support line. So it might fall more. Other than my like super small, like I sold all my calls, thankfully, close to the top to like 86, 87. And then I bought back in I think I bought back in like 67, and then I bought a little bit in like low 60s, and I'm not touching it again until it really stabilizes from a technical perspective, because that growth rate might not be, and I'm talking about Celsius, by the way, that growth rate might not be there, but it's like, why would I buy Starbucks when they're essentially competing for that caffeine market share, right? Like, I don't want to buy Starbucks, quite frankly. I also own McDonald's. So from a coffee perspective.
Yeah, my Celsius, it seems like it's hitting a little bit different niche, and maybe Bros as well. I'm not quite as sure there on the physical store front, but It seems like there is increasing competition all the time in that space, in a lot of different forums, and I'm seeing it to the extent of I ended up buying some Monster. I haven't bought a lot of Monster recently, not stock, the actual drink. I like it, but the cheapest I bought Monster for, it was a sell, I'll give you, in like 5 years, and I've been seeing Celsius on sale. I've been seeing Monsters on sale, like beyond what they normally are discounted at. I've been seeing a couple of the other brands that I just don't drink because I'm kind of curious. And so it seems like there's competition is certainly ratcheting up. And I think part of that is that this consumer is being squeezed just a little bit. I don't think people are going to stop drinking caffeinated beverages, but if they cut back just a little bit, that might curtail some of the growth in the entire industry. And so if you want to grow, you have to do it by drinking your competitor's blood, probably not your own urine. But
why do you have to keep going back there, man? Like,
I love that quote.
Look, I think that with regards to this market, like it is more competitive because there's more players, and it's not a very equal playing field anymore because you have so many substitutes. Like similarly to, Netflix, for example, you're like, who's a competitor to Netflix? And you can say, well, actually Disney and Hulu and Apple TV. What nobody says is PlayStation's a competitor to Netflix. But at the end of the day, like they are competing for your time. If you have 1 hour free or 2 hours free to just like turn your brain off, you're either going to put on Netflix or you're going to go play some video games or you're going to do something else. And so I think that for caffeine specifically, you can get it through an energy drink, you can get it through coffee, you can get it through a whole bunch of different means. And so the market has really widened in terms of, what people are riding that market for, right?
I think Matt Money either wants to select a Mario Kart character, Link, or he wants you to send the link again. So either one.
There you go. So essentially, yeah, Netflix is competing with weed, and there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, CEO does make a substantial difference. And that's, at least for me, that's one thing that I found that works well
with cocaine.
I don't know.
I
like my caffeine.
Basically, I'm screwed with my Celsius position.
I mean, like it's tough to be in a industry that's being commoditized, and it's not quite at that point. I think that there are a few standouts, but like, I don't know. That's keeping me away from Celsius. That kind of kept me away from Bros. There's some other reasons there too, but a big part of my investment thesis is leadership. If it's a manager or leader that I actually believe in and trust in, doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to get in, but I'm interested. And so one of those positions that I don't have as a position yet, but it is on the watch list, and Matt told me to start paying attention, and I am, is Rocket Lab. Peter Beck seems like an absolutely incredible CEO. It's an interesting company. It's one of these that's basically it's a duopoly between SpaceX and Rocket Lab. So it's a bit like Unity. The difference is Unity has had terrible leadership, terrible CEOs, and has been running the ground. We're not going to talk about the earnings. We already said that. And Rocket Lab is being executed well. Still, I think it's a bit early. I don't have a position yet, but they have great leadership. And so it makes me, versus like I think at the end of December, I'm like, hey, maybe under Whitehurst, I'll invest in Unity just because if he seems like he's stepping up as CEO, I absolutely will. Haven't seen that. And so Rocket Lab has my attention the same way that Unity did 6 months ago. I'm paying attention. Maybe 6 months I'll invest.
First of all, welcome, Maddie, to the pod. I just want to, I know we don't want to talk about Unity, and I want to talk about Rocket Lab too. I want to hear about it. I just want to address June's comment. I want to hear why Unity is up.
June bug.
So really quickly, they reported earnings. They double beat on their results, and they replaced their CFO. And I think that was the last member of their executive team that was like, of the old guard. And so now they're essentially completely restructured. There's still a lot, like they're still losing money. There's still a long way to go for them to get back to a healthy place. But from a priorities perspective, it seems as though they're starting to focus on the right things. They're starting to right-size that business a little bit. And and partially the results, but also changing the members of the executive team had a part to do with that. So it gives people hope that the company can turn it around in the right direction. Granted, there is still quite a lot broken with Unity, so the stock is definitely priced to account for that risk. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to, good evening, gentlemen. I appreciate the invite. It's not like I was texting Tevis about an hour ago and even asked if Bootleg Weekly was tonight, but that's a different story for a different day, Tevis. Roy, how are you?
Wait, okay.
I'm doing great. Can't wait for
Read your damn messages, Tevis. I'm heartbroken.
You asked?
I legit was just like, you got your Bag Holders Weekly going on, and I guess you just were so traumatized that you didn't answer.
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Palantir to the freaking moon. Maybe Rocket Lab too. I'm not in that one, but yeah, you and I riding the Palantir train. And since I have another Palantirian,
you can gang up on Tevis. Yeah,
real quick.
Oh, I see it, Matt. I was gonna throw up my text on the screen, but then the amount of stuff that we're texting back and forth, I was
please,
like,
yeah, don't. We'll both be canceled. I'll never get another job ever again. Yeah, please don't. Yeah.
It's like there's no way.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Sorry, Roy. We didn't mean to interrupt you.
So let me ask, like, real quick, probably not long discussion because we do want to talk some Rocket Lab with you. What did you think? So Palantir had earnings. What you thought about that? Who cares? But they announced a number of partnerships right after, and I think most compelling, at least to me, was that Microsoft expansion. That they're using AIP. They're using the FedRAMP initiative that Palantir has with their IL6 data clearance to be able to push, of course, some of their products, including ChatGPT, onto government vendors. What did you think about that partnership?
I thought it was kind of inevitable, right? I mean, I've heard some rumblings in the past, right? Because I've been following Palantir, since 2017, 2018 timeframe, and then really more so in depth when they direct listed. But I've always kind of heard the rumblings of Microsoft is trying to start X or Microsoft is trying to start Y, and they're trying to replicate what Palantir is doing here. And I guess my question is like, I'm still kind of curious. I don't know to the full extent what happened with those projects, right? Are they still trying to implement those at Microsoft? Specifically, which I think Warp Speed is actually going to go after very intently, but I'm still not 100% certain what Warp Speed is all about. Yeah. But a lot of what I heard about from Microsoft was around logistics, supply chain, etc. And it seems like that's what Warp Speed is really going to be focusing on and going after. So I'm not sure if Microsoft said, you know what, these guys, it's kind of like it's almost better if we just use them because then we can scale them faster. It's higher margins for us to focus on the cloud side of the business than maybe it is for us to try to create this software from the ground up. So I'm not 100% certain. I'm just going to be totally blunt, but I'd say it's welcome, and I'd say I'm not surprised, right? It's very much like how Microsoft worked with OpenAI, right? They realized that there's an avenue that they probably can't get right just based off of how Microsoft really focuses on an expertise, which is kind of building out their suite of softwares that really communicate well with each other. But I feel like they just don't have that skill with respect to thinking about things on a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Data interactive layer. A lot of what I've worked with in Microsoft in the past is very much static data. Like you deal with it, you copy and paste it, you build your Power BIs, and there are some things that you can create business intelligence tools with. And but at the same time, I feel like they've always been kind of clunky, and not necessarily to the quality of what I've been able to experience with Foundry.
Dude, how the fuck did we get into this conversation? Like, can we not sneak how every time?
Palantir Daily.
This was my plan with Matt the whole time. We didn't talk about it. We just knew, like, Tevis is here. He hates it when we talk Palantir. He looks at the stock price and just cries.
So I looked at that Microsoft partnership and I was like, oh man, accelerating growth rate, Microsoft partnership. I should buy this again.
Told
And
you.
then I was like, I am never gonna fucking buy this again.
I even told. So the funniest thing, Matt, I on Friday. So I was like very spotty internet. I'd sold covered calls like way out there at $30, but like the stock just freaking roared. Partnership after partnership, market did well, and I'm like, I got to roll these things. And so I asked Tevis to do me a solid because whenever he buys a stock, it goes down. So I'm like, if you could please buy a freaking share, just one. And he refused. He didn't buy a share. So I had to roll out at, I lost a little bit on that, but it's fine.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do, okay? And I mean this genuinely, okay? I'm gonna make a post on X and I'm gonna list you guys, and I'm gonna say for each of my friends, they get to pick a stock, and I have to buy that stock regardless of what price it is. And it's just like, this is the stock that you're cheerleading. And it could be Palantir, it could be Robinhood, it could be Nubank, it could be, because like I want to be involved in these conversations, and I only have SoFi, and I feel like I've pigeonholed a lot of my audience as well as a lot of the content that I talk about, which is very SoFi related. And then like, new reported earnings, and I don't have the time or the effort, or like I don't hold it in my portfolio. So I don't talk about it. So
one share?
That
Just one.
No, I'll buy $1,000 worth.
Oh, okay. Bummer. If it was one share, you know what I was gonna say? I'll type it in the chat.
You're gonna say something silly. Like, why do you guys want me to lose money?
No,
I can do it on my own. I need you guys to make me money.
I would want you to buy one share of that.
There you go.
One share of that. That's fine. I can buy one.
It's like $650,000. I mean, that's like pocket change.
Dude, that's fine. It's for you.
For you.
So that's my offer. I'm gonna add Steve. I'm gonna add you two. I'm gonna add Tanner, and I'm gonna add Chris Hager. And I'm gonna say, okay, you guys each pick a stock, and I have to buy that stock at whatever the price is, and I'll buy like $1,000 of each of those stocks, and that's it. And I get to be a part of the discussion. I get a little taste. And if it goes down, we lose money together. And if it goes up, we make money together. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Speaking of losing money together, my SoFi position.
Watch tomorrow, though, Matt. This
19%, Tevis. 19%. He told me I couldn't lose money. But no, I did hear you guys, so I'm excited to see. With CPI tomorrow, it should be good.
Oh man,
long term, but I got some short term bets for a change. Usually, I don't.
No, long term, I think it'll do fine. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, like it's Anthony Noto. So
Matt, just buy more. Just buy more, Matt. I don't know what to say. Okay, this time around, I will buy a stock of your choosing, Matt. And don't give me so much shit about SoFi. You sold Pepsi to buy SoFi, okay? Like it couldn't have been that much of a loss.
Yeah, it was a nice consolidation. Pepsi needed to go, but I do have 7 puts at $7 for SoFi. I like the 7 number there. So that's January 2025. I'm down on those too, but I think that'll be fine. $7, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only what? I'm not good with math. You guys know that. What is that? $4,900? That's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Not a lot for you.
It's a lot. It's not a lot for you either, you rich bastard.
Stop.
I sold a put on Monday. It's the first time actually doing it in this company, but because I usually don't have this amount of money just like sitting there. But on Tesla, it just won. But I mean, like it's $20,000, so it's like, all right. If it fills, so be it. We'll talk a little bit Tesla tonight. But Matt, if you wouldn't mind just giving us like a 5-minute overview of like the thesis with Rocket Lab, why you're investing in this company that is losing money and obviously is going to go to zero. Why would you put money at it?
It's kind of fun. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
I watched your stream. They had a successful launch. Why stock down?
Why stock down? I don't know. So for those of you guys, I'm just going to toot my own horn. So I had a really good conversation with Peter Beck, the CEO, and Adam Spice, the CFO. Luckily, it was me, Dave G investing, Scotto, and Vince is bullish. And we posted our individual interviews because we had 45 minutes split up between the 4 of us. And so you could either look at my specific questions, which I posted on Sunday, So thank you for like the 2,500 of you that have watched it. It was a lot of fun to chat with Peter. And then we posted each of us the entire interview. So if you guys are interested a little bit more, the problem is that it's definitely for somebody that is already invested in the company and kind of knows what's going on. So to go back to the elevator pitch here, Rocket Lab's a company that started in 2006, so a couple of years after SpaceX. And they all focused around, Peter Beck was kind of just, he's in New Zealand, right? But now it's based in Long Beach, California. But it kind of started off in New Zealand. There's obviously not a space industry much in New Zealand. And so with that, originally Peter's aspiration was to go work for NASA, right? I think a lot of people that eventually end up in space, Chris Kemp, many others, right, have this aspiration to go work for NASA. And basically he went to go visit NASA, and there's actually a documentary that just came out about Peter and many others on HBO Max, if anybody's interested, called Wild Space. And it's about kind of the small launch race that kind of happened from 2012 to like 2020, 2021 timeframe, which we could talk about in just a moment as well. But so Peter Beck goes to NASA. He says, what the heck are these guys really working on? There wasn't really much to be done. And so he's just like, well, that's kind of uninspiring. So he went back and he tried to figure out how to kind of kick launch and kickstart his own company. And so 2006, he did that. A couple of years later, yeah, at least New Zealand's got a space industry going for it. Anyway, other than our damn maple leaves up north. But anyway, so 2006 to, let's just say, 2017, they were focusing on trying to build different rocket engines, different components, etc. 2017 comes around, they create this vehicle called the Electron. Obviously didn't create it overnight, right? They probably were working on it since 2012, 2013. It lifts about 750 pounds into low Earth orbit. So they test it. They were successful to get to orbit and then to outer space, rather, the first try. They had a malfunction. The safety coordinator had pushed a button, so they weren't actually able to deploy and go into actual orbit around the U.S. Or not the U.S., the Earth. So unfortunately, first try wasn't a success per se, but they were pretty much in track to be able to do that before they hit the detonation button. Since then, they've had 52 launches for this small Electron vehicle. It's equivalent or slightly smaller than the Falcon 1 rocket that SpaceX had created not too many years prior to that. So the fastest rocket to ever have 50 launches, even faster than the Falcon 9. So that's something to kind of put under your hat. But they SPAC'd back in 2021. Now everyone kind of gets allergic to the SPAC piece. But with that, they were able to get $700 to $800 million in capital, to which they said, hey, we have a very, very great small launch vehicle. We have the opportunity here to eventually make this profitable, which is if you remove some of the certain items, I'm sure the company is actually profitable. We could talk about that in depth if you guys want. But they looked at some bolt-on acquisitions. So Planetary Systems, Solero, ASI, to create things from like solar panels to star trackers to a lot of different components to create satellites in-house. And so to date, actually, 2023 and 2024, 2/3 of the revenue comes from the satellite side of the business, the space system side of the business, where they can create satellites, operate them for you, etc. They've created great opportunities like participating in the Capstone mission to be able to help preface the Artemis mission that is going to be starting to kick off, here in the next 3 to 4 years, going back to the moon, basically. Escapade, which is going to be going to Mars with New Glen's Blue Origin's New Glenn, in the end of this year, early next, and that's going to Mars. They also have the first private space trip to Venus for one of their satellites as well. And they have a whole laundry list of things. They actually have the solar panels that just went on one of the SpaceX missions that collaborated with NASA to a asteroid that's kind of flying in between Jupiter. And so that's called the Psyche mission. So Rocket Lab powers the satellite with the Solero acquisition there. And so it's pretty impressive. They kind of started off very few launches kind of under their cadence. I think when they direct listed, they were probably 20 or so launches. And since then they've been at about 10 launches per year. They're hopefully trying to get to 15 or 18 this year. And their goal is to really, one, for their small launch vehicle, get it to be the fastest launched vehicle to 100. And then I have some quotes about how used the vehicle is at the moment. But before I state that, then they also have this medium launch vehicle that they're going to launch next year, which is pretty much going to 30x, maybe even 40x the lifting capability. So it's a little smaller than the Falcon 9, but will be reusable day one. So not retrofitted like the Falcon 9, but actually designed to be reused day one. And they're going to try to land it day one, the first launch. And
Neutrino, right?
Neutron, yeah.
Neutron, thank you.
Yeah. And they're hoping to charge about 60 to 65 million per launch for that. They're not taking any orders yet because they'd rather launch it, be successful. And once you have a successful vehicle, you don't have to give anything at a discount, right? Because, if you don't know if it's going to work, or then people are going to come to you and be like, it might blow up our satellite, so we'll pay you 25 million. And they learned with Electron to do the same. So they basically, Electron, they kind of pre-sold some launches before it because they were the only game in town. And they took a while to get through that backlog, and now they're actually selling them for like 8 to 9 million to launch. So there's that. Tevis, I know you want to chime in. One last thing. It is the second most launched space vehicle in the US for the last 4 or 5 years running, behind Falcon 9, obviously. And if you exclude SpaceX, which is kind of a crappy sort of thing, right? But if you think about it from a monopoly standpoint, you remove the person that is doing the majority of the launches. 64% of the launches that happened out of the United States, SpaceX, is the Electron rocket. So it's pretty impressive to show how you have this company kind of come out of nowhere, out of New Zealand, and now Long Beach is kind of their headquarters, to actually start to be a few years behind SpaceX.
So, okay. Let me just ask one simple question, okay?
For sure.
A few years behind SpaceX. SpaceX has a $210 billion valuation. This company has a $2 billion valuation. So if they're a couple of years behind SpaceX, they're valued at 1/100th of SpaceX valuation. What is stopping SpaceX to just completely hostile take over them because they're a public company? Like, and like, why wouldn't SpaceX just buy them out at 5 billion, everybody gets a 2x, and all of a sudden you don't have a competition anymore? Like, if they're so close, nipping at the heels, what's stopping SpaceX from just buying them?
I mean, that's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised if there's been people that have actually approached. I mean, to give some color, Apple, the Global Star satellites that Apple's putting into space was actually subcontracted out to the MDA, and then part of the contract was given to Rocket Lab. So actually, Rocket Lab is helping with some of the Apple satellites. So I wouldn't even, and Sachin and I talked about this pretty in depth in the interview that I had with him. I mean, Google or Apple would actually love to be able to provide this sort of launch capability to their repertoire. But going back to what you said, I think that there is 5 or 6 large shareholders that own over 50% of the company. So Peter himself owns 16%, and there's a couple other large companies, not Hard Money. I've been doing too much research on Hard Money. Private equity funds that actually own upwards of 50%. And so I think if it was me, and I see the conviction and I see the potential, while you're not wrong, Tevis, I think you have to convince those 3 people, right? You have to convince Peter Beck, who owns 16%, and you got to convince the other 2 or 3 private equity groups to say, we're selling ourselves short. But to me, and I also hold probably their same sentiment, it's likely to be a company, especially once you get some of the Department of Defense contracts that are going to be coming through, and many other things, which we can go in depth if you want. I don't want to make it Rocket Lab Weekly or anything like that, but I could see this thing going to 20 billion, 25 billion pretty quickly within the next 4 to 5 years.
So let me ask one more question, and then I'll let Roy ask like the next 5. With Celsius, one of the big risks of investing in Celsius was that the family owned like insiders basically owned a ton of the company, and at any point they could just dump, especially with the stock like Celsius that just jumped so high in such a short period of time. You just had a massive insider dump. Like, I would always have that fear with Rocket Lab as well. Like, the moment it goes to 6 or 8 or whatever, it can get cut in half by, two of their executives selling half of their shares each.
What about Tesla? Do you have that concern with Tesla? Why not?
Well, I mean, Tesla's like, well, first of all, Elon doesn't own, like, I don't know. Tesla's way more.
He owns 20%.
I know, but Tesla's way more liquid. It's also like almost, multiple $100 billion company. It's way larger than this, right? Like, it's not a $2 billion company.
But the magnitude's the same, 16 versus 20%. So I'm trying to understand what you're getting at. Are you saying if he dies, then they're just going to liquidate everything? Or, I mean, that is a huge proponent of it, but the same thing with Elon with SpaceX, right?
I think what Tevis is saying is that when you have a much smaller cap of a stock, you have a disproportionate effect from insider selling versus, a massive company. I mean, like Jeff Bezos keeps selling Amazon all the freaking time, and it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Palantir people stop caring. Of course, part of that's that they're executing. Smaller stocks, especially when they're not profitable, they tend to get just hammered in inside sales. It's not always the case, but I think a lot more than Elon Musk selling some Tesla.
I don't know. I mean, we saw the stock price go from $400 down to $250 when everyone noted that Elon was selling a lot of stock to buy Twitter. And look what happened with the stock price, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I agree. I mean, we have seen the stock go down to $3.50, 60 cents not too recently. And I assume a lot of that was probably hedge fund, like certain hedge funds exiting, right? People that have been involved in the company since the early days, right? And having their $100 billion go, $100 million valuation go to a $2 or $4 billion valuation and wanting to get out, right? And I could see that for certain, right? There's probably people that have done that, people that have participated in the SPAC, right? Because SPACs always generally get preferred valuations as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think that there's an opportunity, and very much so. Still, I mean, there's a lot of risk. I can go down a rabbit hole if you want, but I mean, they just had a successful test. I'm not trying to, get anybody. What I am trying to say is that there is still risk between now and the next 12 months. And the reason being is while they do have a very gap profitable business from space systems, their current satellites and their Electron rocket, they are subsidizing that money and the operating expenditures to go to their medium launch rocket, which has yet to come out. And that will be hopefully tested by mid next year. And then hopefully within 2 quarters after that, and this has kind of been the running thought with Adam Spice, and he confirmed it again in our interview. If everything goes well, then it doesn't necessarily mean the second quarter after, but within 2 or so quarters, he said they should be profitable. So hopefully by the end of 2025, early 2026, you'll get to a place where you're obviously making enough money, and you think one launch from a Neutron is the equivalent of 6 or 7 launches from an Electron rocket. And if you're able to get the cadence up of that, reusability, et cetera, then 2 to 3 launches a year is really going to have a huge impact on the revenue. And not only that, but also that's expected to be a 50% gross margin product as well. So you start thinking you get $300 million of revenue coming in from 4 or 5 launches per annum. 150 million of that goes to the bottom line. It's going to end up being a pretty profitable business in a couple of years.
Yeah, I still think that there's time, but
there is time.
I will say it's if you have a long-term horizon, you don't need the money anytime soon. And like if you're looking at Rocket Lab and like, hey, it probably won't go anywhere for a couple of years, or Tesla, you're like, it's probably stuck for a couple of years. But you look 10 years out, you're like, hey, this can be great. It's better to be too early than too late. There is an opportunity cost and there is risk. I will say, as far as Tevis's comment of a hostile buyout with SpaceX, current administration would probably just say no. Like it's not going to happen. That would be blown up. They want to make sure. I mean, SpaceX is basically is a privatized NASA, And I don't think, want to tie themselves fully to just one company, especially because Biden and Kamala Harris do not like Elon Musk. Under Trump, it might be a little bit more favorable, but
I don't think it would get blocked by regulators, man. It's a $2 billion company. Boeing still wins a ton of contracts. Lockheed, there's Blue Origin. There's a lot of players in the space. Like, it's an itsy bitsy company.
You say that now. Blue Origin is in the same boat of Rocket Lab. They don't have a medium launch vehicle. Blue Origin's vehicle is actually larger than medium. It's actually closer to the Falcon.
I know, but I'm not saying it's like a AT&T or like TELUS situation where there's like 3 players and like
but it's getting that way. It's getting that way, Tavis. I mean, while we think that like everyone thought that Astra was going to be the Lord and Savior, and it sold for 99% drop in the stock price, and then you had Virgin Orbit, and Virgin Galactic's different than Virgin Orbit. Virgin Orbit went bankrupt. It did, and Rocket Lab actually picked up like $100 million worth of Virgin Orbit equipment for like $16 million, so like 16 cents on the dollar. So I mean, that's the benefit, and they have $550 million of cash. I mean, if people are curious about the runway, you know, they are still burning capital. What's that?
What's their burn?
It depends. So it's getting worse up until the medium launch vehicle, and that's just because they're trying to get it on the pad, and these are the most crucial burn sort of in construction parts of getting the first launch and everything kind of up and done. But after that, the cash burn goes extremely the opposite direction, to the point where they think within 2 quarters you're going to be profitable. Another piece is for cash flow perspective, a lot of things used to be subbed out to them, meaning they would have to kind of like come out of pocket and then they'd get paid later upon delivery. Now they're going to be kind of more of a prime contractor for a lot of different things. So they're rather going to be the ones that are kind of holding a lot of the capital and distributing it out over time. And you have a lot of other projects that were very large, like that Global Star contract I was talking to you about, starting to get delivery. So their actual cash flow is getting slightly better as well. But I would say their cash burn for the next 2 quarters, I think they have, between now and when they launch the vehicle, it's probably going to be another $70 to $80 million specifically on the Neutron rocket. So they've spent, at least from the conversation we had with Adam last week, he said they've spent about $220 million to date. They want to spend about, or they have forecasted to spend 300 or slightly under is what they're kind of tracking, but they don't want to relay to the market that it's, but they're thinking they're going to be on track, if not slightly under, and they're going to be at that $300 million mark. So between now and the middle of next year, they're, you know, so I guess 12 months from now, planning on spending about $80 million worth for specifically Neutron. And then there's also the other things like setting up future space systems and stuff like that eventually will turn out to be profitable as well.
So if all of their, like, let's just take the most pessimistic route possible for all their future launches. Like, I want to know what the runway looks like for this company before they have to raise more money.
I would give it, at a worst case, 10 quarters. So another 2.5 years.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks to me like that they've turned the corner. In Neutron, I always say neutrino. I don't know why. It looks very compelling. It wouldn't surprise me if it's backed up a couple of quarters, that we're looking at maybe a year away from profitability. But I don't think that they get to a situation where they run out of cash unless they need that for ramping up some R&D thing that they didn't anticipate, or there's another Virgin Orbit opportunity to buy equipment for pennies on the dollar. In that case, there might be a little bit of dilution, but I don't know that it would hurt the stock price.
And they are looking for another acquisition as well. They just everyone's kind of speculating. We don't really necessarily know what it is. We know it's not going to be more than 500 million. So those just be another piece. In February or March, they did a 300 comparable to SoFi, right? So if I did that fundraise, the convertible shares, and they raised about 300 million associated with that, and then they did a cap call as well. So they did that because they had the opportunity to. They didn't need to. They still had about $200 million worth of capital, which probably would have lasted them, but it was probably a little closer. But now they have 500 some, and they can go acquire $100 million company, $150 million company. And a lot of times these small companies, you guys kind of know, like a lot of them are very much burdened by resource. They don't have enough people to actually like in capital to really get them going. And so you buy them. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much for RKLB Weekly.
So I'll kind of wrap this up, unless you have any other thoughts on it, Tevis. Is just where I'm at on it is it's on the list. It's I'm paying attention to it. So if me buying a stock was marriage, this is me beginning to date the girl. And I do that because I like the dad, Peter Beck, good quality guy. I think he seems like a very intelligent individual. He has a good plan as far as vision, and he's not the type of visionary where he's just going to throw money just wildly and spend it like it's 2020 or something like that. So I think the company will be around. And
Tevis, I know you have a comment back on that one, but you think about the competition of where they came from, right? They're talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of initial capital that they can use to fund their space endeavors, right? From the early 2000s. Peter Beck started in an arena basically with zero money and has really bootstrapped his way to be able to get there. He's not a billionaire. He's not even $100 millionaire, right? The only way he got to $100 million net worth is through owning a percentage of this company. So he's really had to like fight and scratch his way to be able to fund and get to where he is today. And I think with Neutron, I think that'll really be the opener for the stock. And I think you're going to see a lot of backlog opening up. And I think right now it's depressed because there is still risk, right? It's still a space company. They're still burning money. They're not profitable at the moment, but give it a year's time. And even if it doubles or triples, right, it's still worth potentially looking at because potentially some of that risk goes away. So, it might not be for you right now, but in 2 to 3 years, with some of that risk going away and the growth year over year, it's going to happen slow, right? The first year, they might only launch one rocket. They might launch 2. And then, the second or third year, they might only launch 4 or 5 for that Neutron rocket. But it's going to get to the point where it's launching 40 times a year at $60 million. It's $2.5 billion worth of revenue.
So is this your stock pick for me?
What, today?
Yeah. Well, eventually I'm going to make this tweet and you get a freebie. Like, I can't veto it. I have to buy this stock and you can pick it.
What's your time horizon for this stock? That's another thing, right? Like, if you're looking for a year's worth,
no.
I wouldn't put you in this corner.
I'm just gonna be. Let's say until it goes to 0 or until let's say multi-year, long term.
What does multi-year mean? That could mean 2 years, 3 years?
Forever, Matthew.
Forever? Then, yeah, that's probably... I like this one more than Palantir, I'd say.
And plus, I think Roy is going to pick Palantir anyways.
I won't actually, because that's the obvious choice. I'm not going to do it. Also, I know if you bought Palantir, I know what would happen to the stock.
And
if we can do a crypto, you're going to be buying $1,000 of Dogecoin.
Wow, there it is.
Ooh, my dad owns Dogecoin.
I honestly... I have a little bit. I think I'm going to buy a little bit more. Elon Musk is pushing this X payment platform, and at some point, like, it's not a competitor to PayPal at all, but at some point it's going to launch, and I'm like 75 to 80% confident that Dogecoin is going to be not the only means of payment on that system, but it's going to be heavily featured because Elon Musk has a love affair with this thing. So.
Sorry to jump. I gotta run to Cashflow Chronicles. Sorry for jumping.
Thanks for being here, Matt.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for letting me speak for 45 minutes on RKLB. Cheers.
All right, see ya. Okay, so are we going to talk about Tesla, or are we going to talk about the Trump interview? Because that was, I think, my headline for the.
So yeah, let's skip that. But I'll just mention it real quick. There's an interesting discussion between. What the Uber CEO said about Elon's robotaxi idea, and you guys can read the comments yourself. There's a Business Insider article as well, but my main thoughts on it is what he mentioned just sounds like kind of nitpicking on the idea. Like, it's going to take some work and it's going to take some execution, but you see what Elon Musk has done, and And he's not really betting against him, but I don't think that they're going to have an issue with this. He even mentioned that whether Tesla owners would be willing to let strangers ride in their car.
I mean,
I
what's
own
he
a
gonna
Tesla.
say? Like, what is he gonna say? Oh, yeah, this is a great idea, better idea for
Exactly.
this industry, and you're gonna eat my lunch. Like, of course he's gonna push back, right? Like, and it makes sense. The argument like holds water. It's just neither party knows what users are gonna end up doing until that's live.
Yeah, and I would be willing to give it a try as a Tesla owner. We'll see how that shakes out, what it looks like, and it may be like the first time that I send it out that somebody, takes a dump in my car, and I'm like, okay, never again. I mean, that could happen.
Hey man, it might be the CEO of Redfin, so
if he's in the vehicle, I don't even want to look at the security footage, like whatever he did in there.
You're like, he's driving my car. What the fuck are rates at?
I hope that I get a good premium off of that, because I mean, like, my goodness. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Tesla, not Tesla, Elon Musk, face of Tesla, Donald Trump. And they had their spaces yesterday. Of course, they had some technical issues, not so much on the political side, although you're welcome to discuss that as well, since you're Canadian and you're not vested in the United States. But was there anything that, like, what was the main? Well, there's one. I guess let's focus on this. There was a brief discussion floated out there, and this has been mentioned before as well, that perhaps Elon Musk could have a role in the government as like a cost-cutting agent. So in other words, like, he oversees a commission that's goal is to trim the U.S. budget by a certain amount.
Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, let me just start off here. I like don't really love talking politics on this channel, partially because I'm not in the US, so I can't, even vote in your guys' election. And so why would I alienate people by sharing my, views? What I will say around this particular event was that it was pretty impactful from several different lenses. Number one is the very strong emotions it elicited even before anything was recorded. Like the EU threat, basically, and all of these traditional news outlets, highlighting the outage and highlighting, like, there was like a hashtag trending for like a Twitter blackout period during that time. We had Kamala release like a pretty spiteful email trying to ask for money. Anyways, there was a strong reaction, which to me has some signal. I think that what we witnessed, at least what I witnessed, was 2 hours of unscripted, cogent, coherent, logical, rational conversation. Maybe some over exaggerations here and there. But on the whole, I mean, I think he summarized it well by saying, would Biden do this for 2 hours? Would Kamala do this for 2 hours? And I think Elon even invited Kamala to do it, and she refused. So I think to that sense, he absolutely killed it. I think the points he conveyed were clear. Like, you could understand the thought process behind them. Not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying, like, it was clear the thought process that brought him to that point. And overarchingly, it had this theme of, like, I don't know how to say it. It had this theme of optimism. Like, we're doing this for the good of our country type of thing. Or this is what we believe is the best for the country. That could be wrong. That could be right, but this is what I believe, and this is what I think will be the underpinning of that, which is this like patriotic duty to public service. That's just one person's opinion. So I honestly, like, I listened to it and I thought it was going to be like the debate was, which was they go off on a tangent and they talk about golf and they talk about sleeping with prostitutes. And I'm like, I thought it was going to go off freaking rails, but it was on point. They were talking about the issues. They were explaining the thought process behind them. And so from that perspective, I think it was really a great format.
So yeah, I won't go too much in the political side other than just saying I'm an independent. I've not voted for either major party the last couple of years. I am going to vote for one of the candidates now, and I won't say which. I would love for Kamala to come on. I think it's great to have an opportunity just for both major and Kennedy too, for the major people that are going to be voted on to have that time just unscripted to actually talk. Unscripted though it did drag at moments. I thought there was rambling. I think there was more than just a little bit of exaggeration, but I mean, like that's kind of what you get with those sort of things. The normal thing is the healthy thing is usually these are so scripted that you already know the questions beforehand. You already know your exact answers. You've memorized the key statistics. Versus this, it just tells you like what people are actually thinking. And I think I actually get more out of this than I do any other format.
Yeah, and let me just read a couple of these comments. And by the way, let me just say I have never voted for Trump nor Biden. I've never voted in any U.S. election. But jokes aside, look, I think the through line is this format. I mean, Ross says it should be a mandatory long-form discussion for politicians without their team, without teleprompters, and clear policy instead of trashing competition for the vote. This is very different from a 3-hour rally where he's pandering to an audience that he can see and interact with. And this is very different from a debate where he's trying to, have zingers and gotchas. I think that when we saw the picture of him on the call, like he had a notepad with notes in front of him with talking points, presumably. So it wasn't like purely unscripted, but I think that it was a good format because it helped stay on topic. The call was entirely surreal. I appreciated the sentiment. Scrutiny is something all these politicians need. I agree with that. I think that you need people to hold the politicians accountable to the talking points. What is the platform? What are they running on? What is their policy? As opposed to, insults thrown and the popularity contest that it's become. So anyways, I just think that I will defend the format, and I would defend the format if any other candidate had done, had kept on topic for that amount of time. And plus, like the dude's 80, man, or 81, something like that. It's just wild, like the stamina to, because he was on it for 3 hours. Like they had an hour of technical difficulties and then 2 hours of talking all across the board. Anyways.
So we've had in the United States, some periods of time where they actually get cost conscious in the government. The most recent one was, of course, under Newt Gingrich, the contract with America, might have said it wrong, and Clinton. So well before you were born, because you're like 22. But no, I'm just kidding. There's not really been much focus on this. The U.S. budget is ramping up to the point where receipts from taxes are nearing the amount that we pay on interest. Part of that is interest rates are up very high, but this is a big problem that we've been running a budget deficit for a long time, and it's not sustainable. And at some point, something needs to change or it's going to break. I think that this may be one of those last opportunities to have it be like, okay, kind of painful, but we need to actually make some cuts and allow the economy to actually catch up to what's happening in the budget and begin to pay back some of the deficit. It'll be a long process, a slow process, but I think it's still doable at this point. But you need somebody in there aggressive like Elon Musk. So the other time in American history in the last 100 years that we've had something like that was under Calvin Coolidge. And so actually and he had actually ended up taking over, for Warren G. Harding after he was assassinated, and ran a very staunch cost-cutting campaign over his 7 years as a president. Was not well loved by people in the government, but outside of that, his policies had a great impact on the United States. Overall, led to a time that was known at the time as Coolidge prosperity. So Roaring 20s also sometimes it's known as. So if Elon Musk came in, okay, you remember how much he trimmed off of Twitter?
So first of all, like, yes, I do. And I think that like let's hold our horses a little bit because yeah, I'm not blind. There's obviously stuff that he's going to say to get elected that he's not going to hold to once he is elected, and I think the spending is part of that. Like, oh, they talked about the deficit being 35 trillion. They talked about $1 trillion being added every 100 days, and they talked about all of this stuff, and you can sort of see him like nodding along, but I don't think for a second that he's going to be cutting that deficit down. And I don't think for a second that if Elon were part of any committee that he would have any autonomy to make any decisions. And I don't think for a second that Elon is purely altruistic. As much as I enjoy, Elon and a Tesla shareholder, I don't think he's going to be purely altruistic for any government cuts just out of pure patriotism. Like there are ulterior motives. These people have vested interests in these outcomes as, heads of Fortune 500 companies. Like, are we talking the same language here? Like, what's going on?
You can bet any cuts that would hurt or undermine Meta in any way, he will be doing those in a heartbeat. I mean, it'd be really useful to have a commission that's actually serious on that. The United States has not been serious on that for a long time. Usually that's just used as a talking point, particularly on the right, to try to get elected. But Trump has a track record, as does the Biden administration and Kamala as well, of spending lots of money and not worrying too much about the budget. Makes you a little bit more popular, causes some long-term pain. So I don't know. We'll see. One of the other things that I thought was interesting, or do you have more on that? Otherwise, we could move on to this last little bit that I thought was of interest.
No, I thought this part was funny. They got into this little like they sort of got their wires crossed because one of them was talking about like nuclear bombs. The other one was talking about like nuclear as an energy option. So they spent, I think, like a few minutes talking about different things altogether. Anyways, I don't. But yeah, look, I think like for me, my politics is very central, and I think he said a lot of the right things that he needed to say to essentially hold a stance. Because like, one thing that I don't like about Kamala in general is that she flip-flops quite a bit in her stance, or has been known recently to flip-flop quite a bit. And so at least I like that he's holding a stance, if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it. Do I think that all of the things are right? Absolutely not. Do I think that he's going to hold to all of those promises? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not that naive. Do I think that's going to be a huge difference? Absolutely not. But directionally, do I think that, these are things that are going to be for the better versus worse? Probably.
Dude Face had a comment there. No policies. If you go to Kamala Harris's political site, there's always a policies page on like every candidate, even when you're running for the freaking school board.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have one. And it's like, okay, so no policies in? I mean, like, I'm down with that, I guess. Not really, though. I don't know what that campaign is doing, who the people are behind it, but that's actually kind of embarrassing. So
even that email, like, read so desperate, like it was reeking with desperation, if you ask me. Because she's like, "Oh, richest person in the world is a lackey for my political competitor. Donate money, give me money." It's like, dude, what are you like? It's great. Like the timing was great. Anyways, it was a whole thing, and like I think that if there hadn't been such a big mess around trying to censor it, like what's that? Is it the Streisand effect? Basically, like they were trying to mute the effect and they made the effect bigger. Like if the EU didn't issue a threat, and if they didn't have like blackout hour at 8 p.m. on Twitter, and if they didn't have all these, news articles talking about how negative it was, like I think that just amplifies it even more and makes people more curious to even go and give it a listen themselves, right? If it's just another podcast or another interview, like he did an interview with, what was his face? The guy who gifted him the Cybertruck, Aiden Ross. And he did an interview with like all these other people he's done interviews in the past. And like, do you know what they talked about? I don't, because I didn't really watch it. But this one was a really big name and it got so much like tangential coverage, negative coverage, that it just like amplified the importance or perceived importance so much more.
This is actually, I'll tell you guys, because people are wondering if you'll throw this up. This is who I'm actually going to vote for president. It's the guy who is willing to drink his own urine and drink the competitor's blood. Hardcore on no plan B. We've already diversified. We're already ready. Glenn Kelman, CEO of Redfin. So I just love him. Yeah, I don't know anything about him other than just a little bit about the business and that quote. But oh man. So one of the other things that surprised me, and I had not realized this because this is done kind of stealthily, but it does kind of impact things, is there was a lot of talk about oil and the EVs and funding things in the future. And Elon and Trump both agreed, like, hey, drilling is good. You can actually see, and a lot of people feared that it would be the opposite, that when Biden would be elected, that this would be cut severely back. But that's not the case at all. U.S. crude oil production is at its highest level ever. We are actually the number one producer of oil in the world. Yes, that's above Saudi Arabia. That's above anywhere else. And we continue to increase that bit by bit. Some of that's technology. Some of that's exploration. Of course, that's fracking. There's a variety of sources as well. But that kind of took me by surprise. And why do you think that the current administration is being so quiet about this, while at the same time Trump is saying, basically, drill, baby, drill?
There you go, Roy. You got your CEO rooting for you.
Dude, how cool would it? I know that that's not him, but man, how cool would that be?
That somebody made that account and commented that like while we were on this stream. That's dedication to this channel. This is the guy that has like 10 other accounts. They have like bald-headed Tevis. They have like Tanner's Crazy X. They have all of Anthony Noto and the entire executive team. This is the same guy, and I love him for it. Why haven't they? I cannot make sense of anything that they do or don't talk about. I just like, I don't know. Maybe the what you call it, the voter base isn't that interested. They seem more interested talking about, global equity and all of these social issues and a whole bunch of like. I don't think I've ever seen Kamala. And granted, I haven't seen many of her talks or rallies or whatever, but like, I don't think I've ever seen her talk about like actual geopolitics, actual, economy, oil, so on and so forth. Like, I've only seen her talk about like secondary social issues.
She has a great talk on Ukraine.
Right. Like, yeah, please tell me your strategy. I don't know.
I won't play here because it'll get political, and she's the sitting vice president, so I don't want to mock too much. But not that I fear her. It's just but I don't know if that talk was geared towards third graders or what. But I'll have to send you that clip. So like kind of for full circle, the reason I think why that they're not discussing that they're drilling this much is because that's not part of their platform. But one of the reasons why drilling has ramped, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's a high price anyway, and we are kind of a free market system. So there's restrictions, there's taxes, there's certain things you can do to try to prevent some of that, but it was going to grow anyway. But the other factor is like inflation has been really high and it's persistent. And if you can get access to cheaper oil, and of course, that's the whole supply and demand thing, that will at least cap inflation, if not reduce it over time. And so they've had a vested interest in allowing oil production and oil to scale. And I think that's maybe why we didn't spike quite as much as I was fearing. And hopefully why we'll see going back full circle, a two handle on the CPI tomorrow. We'll see.
What are we at right now? 3.2?
I believe 3.1. It's expecting a 2.0 or just slightly under. That's core.
Either way, like I think I don't know. Like regardless of what your politics is, I want to have an equal playing field on the topics and the policies across the entire board from both candidates. I want to see policies, man. I want to debate the points, not the person. Like I want to debate. It's not a popularity contest of like, oh, this person is. I'm not going to carry on. Like I want to see what their stances are and what their promises are, and not really like have it be a pure popularity contest, because this is not a reality TV show. This is a country.
Yeah. If it was a reality TV show, I mean, it'd have pretty high ratings, I think. So passionate fans.
Yeah, it would be a pretty sad one. Tragedy, not a comedy.
Yeah, let me throw this up since you asked so people can see it. This is CPI. The last print was negative 0.1%, brought the headline number to a 3.3% overall in all categories. And a lot of that was because energy was down substantially. Bring that up a little bit more. So it's just 1% up compared to all items combined 3%. This is a year, over a year. So very little inflation. Energy commodities specifically have fallen. Services are up a bit. Thanks to scumbags like Centerpoint here in Houston. So wish I had to order those guys, but I didn't.
So basically what you're saying is we're going to be green tomorrow.
I think that it's likely to either come at 3.0 headline or 2.9. If it does, I think we're going to be green. 2.9, I think maybe quite green. Usually the market, as we know, overreacts. And so that initial pump will probably be sold off a bit. Or Powell if we go ahead.
Is Powell speaking?
I don't think so. This is just a CPI print. If he is, it's later in the week. Yeah, it's not tomorrow though. So 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. That'll be the data. So 1 hour before the market opens. Yeah, it's a big one. And I think that this may be like the final piece that they need to feel secure in cutting rates, because they're supposedly data dependent. We'll see. And hopefully the data is in favor. It's been a while. Monthly options expiry as well coming up. So keep that in mind.
Monthly options expiry. Is there anything else that we want to talk about, Roy, or do we want to take any questions from the audience or anything to that effect, or shall we call it now?
Yeah, I think I'm good calling it. Other than just saying how awesome that quote is from the Redfin CEO. If I was to get a tattoo, okay, probably wouldn't be that one, but I would at least think about it. So, if I end up having ever another kid, he's going to be named Glenn. I'm going to name him after that guy. It's so good.
Glenn, I mean, he sounds like Glenn is the name of somebody who would say some shit like that. Honestly, I'm sorry to any Glens in the audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that quote has been the theme of this episode. Everybody, find you a CEO like Glenn, one you would follow to the ends of the earth to make stock go up. And Bald-Headed Tevis is here just in time for us to wrap up this shit show of a live stream called Bootleg Weekly. We thank you for being here. I have no idea why you're here. 65 of you watching this on a 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. But thank you regardless. And I and Roy will talk to you again next week. Goodbye.